like to welcome everybody here today, and particularly to thank you all for coming. With a weather forecast of 38 degrees, I really feared that the attendance might be decimated. But I'm really thrilled that everybody has come, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the presentation today. Because today we have a very special guest who's going to speak to us. He came to South Australia quite some time ago, so he's got a lot to tell us. An eminent surgeon, but also a man of many talents and very wide-ranging interests. He is a diarist, something of a family trait, I believe. His interest in the arts led him to join the Royal South Australian Society of the Arts as one of the very early members. Reports of his demise seem to have been premature. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together and give a big welcome to Dr. John Woodforde.
Am I being heard all right? Thank you, yes. Good to see there's actually quite a few old colonists here as well, I think. So I'm uncomfortable talking like this, especially about me. I think what I'd really like to talk about is what we've achieved in this little town. It's 30 years in October since I stepped ashore with the members of the Rapid and the Colonel Light, and what we've created. For us British, it was a wilderness. So in 30 years, our modern buildings, our modern roads, the Magic Lantern Show, a lot has been achieved. So let's talk a bit about this. So are you all right where I'm standing? I'll be off to the side a little bit. So the 6 parrot puddings, we'll get into that. Ship's provisions coming out, it makes one hungry for fresh food. So the beginning, Bridgewater, Somerset, 1810. 5 sisters, Sophie, Fanny, Julia, Meliora, Harriet. Harriet was my favourite, who I corresponded with, sending her Roxons, natural history specimens back from here. So my father was a doctor, and I was apprenticed to him. His father was surgeon's mate on HMS Hussar. So there's a little bit of history. Prior to that, there are quite a lot of divines. So one of them, you may have heard of my great uncle, Samuel Woodforde. He wrote the Diary of a Country Parson. So it's quite a well-presented book. So I was apprenticed for 5 years to my father in Bridgewater and around, and then obtained my licentiate from the Society of Apothecaries in 1832. So part of that, the practical experience, was with patients at the general dispensary, which is quite an eye-opener from house calling. So it was a fairly grueling study in London. So you can see chemistry and therapeutics, anatomy, physiology, anatomical, etc., medicine, clinical medicine, midwifery. And you can appreciate it was very difficult once we were out in the colony here at the beginning. Everything was needed. So I spent 2 years, 34, 35, as a doctor for government in the Eastern Mediterranean. Turkish control, Ali Pasha, Egypt was subduing the natives, so to speak, in the Eastern Med. And that's where in various towns up and down the coast I was moving. And this is where I met William Light. So this is from his log of the Nile in Iskenderun, January 1835. Mr. Woodforde, the TG, whom we met at Tripoli, came on board with 2 English captains. So as you can see, we're travelling around. We met him several times. The TG is somewhat of an anomaly. I was given a temporary commission, and this made me a temporary gentleman. So it was a slightly odd prefix. So Light was, the Pasha needed a navy. Light came over and advised him on the navy and went back and pick up the steamship Nile from the British. So Light's out of work from all what he did in the Peninsular War. So he's going to help the Egyptian build a navy. So he brings back their flagship with John Hindmarsh under him. And that's when we started hearing the discussions about the new colony, and they were both vying for the governorship. Hindmarsh had more patronage, etc. So the survey was to be led by William Light. So we left City Canal, Blackwall. The rapid was late, had to be held up because Light was suffering on and off from consumption. So unfortunately he was delayed in setting forth, which allowed settlers' ships to get here before him, which made life difficult. So left in May. So I'm going to be showing lots of the brilliant artists we've had. So John Skipper. So I'm not a good traveller. So I was seasick a lot of the time. My diary's not too good. So a few lines just looking through it. 1836, spoke the ship Zenobia, and several officers came on board to dine with us, and I availed myself of help from the surgeon. The usual absurd ceremony, crossing the line, a sovereign exempted me from the festivities. Interesting natural history things, like the island of Amsterdam, volcanic island with boiling hot springs where the sealers could cook their catch directly when they got there. But really a miserable trip, very glad to reach Kangaroo Island in August. So here's one of William Light's beautiful watercolours. It's Mr. and Mrs. Bear's tent. I think that's Mr. and Mrs. Bear at the tent. And we've got a marine. We've got the settler ships already here clamouring for where is the new town going to be. Very difficult. So I was out with the rest of the rapid crew looking for water supplies. This labourer is looking for water. Water was the issue. So, William Light did a quick bit of mapping around there, decided this isn't going to work for a colony. So we headed across to the mainland, and a fairly woolly trip it was across to Rapid Bay. So just one of Light's little watercolour vignettes on his coastal chart. It's interesting, so we're looking south, and Yankee Lily, so we got Yankee Point and Second Valley and Rapid Bay. So looking down the coastline. Here is another picture of us, again from Light, the landing at Rapid Bay. There's his lady, Maria Gandhi, and you can see no trees. You just get a feel for what it was like. So September 1836, and Light was really like this area. So some of my shipmates in later life, they all did well for themselves. You know, he's an admiral. Jacobs Creek Winery, he was a premier. So all successful people. So William Light was very taken, so much so that he split the survey team into two. One to Holdfast Bay, which they knew of, was an area likely to be good, but he loved this area. And so I stayed behind with the survey team split in half, and we surveyed all this area. So this is the sort of map he's done. We're seeing the Rapid Bay, proposing a jetty. He's proposing a weir. This is how much the river would have flooded. These are locations for 2 water wheels for grinding corn. So well thought out. You know, it's a practical, applied engineer. So we did, so again, some of Angus's beautiful watercolours. So this is Rapid Bay back then. and Second Valley with the natives fishing in the area. Here is again a lithograph from London, but from a painting by Light. Here I am in the Rapid Bay Valley, going out to shoot dinner. So it just shows you what it was like with the amount of trees and interesting limestone rocks. We walked up over the hills. So I'm out shooting for food. We were shooting at all the opportunities we could take. So maybe a little bit about parrot pies. So Mrs. Beaton has a recipe, and Rouse Hill from early Sydney has a recipe. So what do we need? I'll step back a bit. So we need a dozen parakeets. So I guess the rainbow lorikeet would work well. A few slices of beef, preferably underdone, rashers of bacon, hard-boiled eggs, parsley, lemon peel, stock, puff paste. So line a pie dish with the beef cut into slices. Over them place 6 of the parakeets, dredge with flour, fill up with the egg, cut in slices, scatter over the seasoning. Then we put in the bacon, cut in small strips, the remaining parakeets, fill up with beef, seasoning, pour in stock, puff paste, bake for an hour. So there was a lot of these. I made some myself, but very soon, even before Adelaide was there, I was in the tents in Adelaide paying a shilling to have my parrot pies made for me. So if you're trying to be smart and impress guests over a dinner, you get some feathers and wash the feet, and then careful decoration around the pie of feet and feathers is quite an impressive issue. So William Light, I mean, he was drawing on the battlefield in the Peninsular Campaign, quick for military, but he's an excellent artist. So here we are looking south. We're at the Yankee River, a tent site. So we've walked up and we're surveying the local region. 20th September. Here's a portion of the coastal chart that William Light did. So we've got Second Valley, Rapid Bay, and the tent site was up here by the Yankee River. And Mr. Norman's village was founded in 1850 up here, so the extent of it. And very impressed was Light with this country. And I think was sort of water supply was probably again the issue that Adelaide was going to put in Holdfast Bay. So I wasn't there the entire time. We all went on board the Rapid because there'd been indications from Barker and Sturt that there might be a port somewhere around Holdfast Bay. So this was part of the expedition to look at that, looking for 16 Mile Creek through the mangroves. So that's me in the back of the hatch, and we're going up. I was put on shore with Pullen, and we were looking for around what became known as Torrens Island, but they were successful. So an Aboriginal seeing what we're up to. So quite difficult inlet with to come up and through all these mangroves. So that was an interesting trip. On the way back, we had a huge storm brew up, so the holdfast is quite true. We anchored off the mouth of the Onkaparinga, so this is where Noarlunga built and the river. So we spent a night there before getting back to Rapid Bay. So in Rapid Bay in October, Light spent the mornings working on the coastal chart from all his work. And this is beautiful. It's artistically beautiful as well as technically beautiful. So the little vignettes in them and the kit he used. So in the afternoons when he was done with that, he and I would go shooting and fishing for a bit of relaxation. And he actually had a pet duckling there that he was very distraught one night when the dingoes got it. So we stayed up all night and we shot the dingo. So another one of Mr. Skipper's beautiful paintings. He's looking from offshore. Here are our tents at Rapid Bay. And 24th of November, the Africane passes us. I'm in my tent reading my book that I got from my father that I brought out, which you can see over on the table there. And Skipper was painting us from offshore. So a nice meeting. I delivered the first boy in November 1836, James Rapid Hoare, and then I couldn't go to the Proclamation Day ceremonies because I was, Mrs. Finnis had given birth and there were difficulties. So I didn't go up till later on into town, but we could hear the cannons of the buffalo arriving. So I was still part of the survey team, and Light moved up there just before Christmas while I was down in Rapid Bay. And this is a view on the edge of Adelaide going down to the Torrens when it was a little bit more developed. So I lived there for a while before becoming a civilian. So again, Light's beautiful mapping of South Adelaide. So this was the campsite for the survey. So just nice, again, looking at Skipper, beautiful to look at the plains before we British descended on the area. So it's early 1837, just how the plains looked with fires lit by the natives and fairly tree-free a lot of areas. So the standard, this was the spot for unloading at what became Glenelg. Here's Barton Hack's bullocks helping. Everybody spent time in tents on the shore here before walking to Adelaide, like my friend Mary Thomas, wife of the printer. She, their children had to vacate their tent when the press was unloaded for printing the proclamation. And then in town, their press was doing the newspaper. But what's interesting is on the table there, the first copy of their newspaper is on the table there, and that came out on the Buffalo. The second copy was, from then onwards, was printed by them in Adelaide. So just an interesting 1846, looking at the map by Kingston, you can see where the building is in black. But we all initially came to Buffalo Row, then Coromandel Row, up near where the jail was to be built, and then became more official with the emigrants' location. So it's just interesting to show you how organised things became once we've been there a while. So this is a note for people in Emigration Square. They've got information from the Rapid that new ships are arriving. So the current emigrants who are in the Emigration Square and Buffalo and Coromandel Row have to get ready and leave. So it's quite organised. So it's just amazing the quantity and the quality of the surveying of the survey team. 28th of March. So this is the year that Queen Victoria comes to reign, and these are surveyed. Here's North Adelaide surveyed. I couldn't afford the costs of South Adelaide acres, but I bought two in North Adelaide. So one near Montefiore and one up near Childers Street. Then later on, I also got an 80-acre block down towards Glenelg. So South Adelaide acres were being sold. Finnis purchased 78 for I think 20 odd pounds, and I was going to pay in a few years' time when I married £200 for a small fraction of that block. So speculation was quite something. So Martha Berkeley, another one of our beautiful early artists. We're down near the river, the ubiquitous water carts bringing water into Adelaide. People living in the parklands. Here's Government Hut built by the drunken Marines on board the Hindmarsh who forgot the chimney, I think. The chimney was added. So if we look, that's 1837. Only a little while later, much grander. So I was to go with my wife-to-be to quite a few occasions in Government House. So I left the survey, quit the survey in 1837, so I had to live somewhere else. I applied to Mr. Fisher to live in the parklands and had my new little hut built. So this is up near where the railway station was to be built, and just opposite the Bank Street where the South Australia Bank was built. I was able to bring out some of my things I brought out from Britain and finally put them somewhere a little bit more appropriate. So I married Caroline, who I'd met at the Government Hut at Trinity. August 1838. Here she is in later life. There, a newspaper cutting talking about her, Mrs. Woodforde, apparently one of the type who spoke but little of her early days, very reserved and prim, struck a feeling more of awe than comradeship into the hearts of her grandchildren. So it's very difficult, as you know, of having a family in a colony like this. Even though I'm a doctor, you know, our first child died after 1 week in 1839. John, 41, Harriet, 42. She married O'Halloran. So there's interesting, these early names, interesting how they all come together. So Caroline was 1844 and she died 3 years ago. So it's a difficult life. Frank, 46, Meliora, 48, George, 50, Arthur, 54. February died in June. So it's a very tough. There are lots of small graves in West Terrace. So here we moved from the parklands to live. Once I'd married Caroline, we lived next door to Barton and B.B. Hack. So famous early colonists here in later life. So there are his bullocks. So we were in a little house next door to the Hacks on Hindley Street. So Mr. Fisher down near living on North Terrace, down near the Holy Trinity, sparks from his chimney set the survey buildings on fire in January 39, and Light was really distraught, lost a lot of his paintings. So I put up Light's women, so his lady Mariah and his housekeeper, while he stayed at the bank. And this is the bank just across the road from my hut. The river was beautiful when we first got there. You know, a ship of the line was someone wrote could float easily in them. Beautiful billabongs. It rapidly deteriorated with us British there. So, and what you see in a lot of these pictures, are the water carts bringing water from the thing into town. But in Von Gerard, you can later on you can see how abysmal the Torrens was. So January 1839, lots of children were dying from dysentery and typhoid from drinking this. So I was busy, but there were a lot of deaths and people were digging wells. So another brilliant early artist we had, Gill. So we're looking down Rundle Street. We're in North Terrace in the middle of it. There's the Beehive and Falding's Chemists. We stayed temporarily down in Rundle Street while we were waiting for our new cottage to be built. So Gill has flipped around in the middle of the north of King William Street there, and we're now looking down Hindley Street to the west. And so this is down acre 78, and this is our £200 worth where we lived. We can't quite see it in Gill's painting. We've got a newspaper office here, and you can see there's a gap past it. We're in that gap. So we moved into it in March 1840. We're going to spend many years there. So interesting things happened while living there. I mean, in March 1847, I was charged with obstructing the public sewer and watercourse. I got off that charge, but the roads were in such miserable disrepair that I couldn't get my buggy and trap to go and visit patients out onto the road, so I had my men dig a hole through so I could, and was charged for it. So again, something from the newspapers about me. The worthy doctor, heart of gold, if a caustic tongue. He built on his block a house with a picket fence and a side door for his patients opening into Gilbert Place. He would often be seen of a night time patrolling the streets, puffing a huge meerschaum pipe, which you'll see on the table over there, while his daytime hobby was his garden. So I grew horses, and my gardening were my relaxation. So here we are, Hindley Street. Again, a beautiful Skipper watercolour showing Lieutenant Walker in his gig and his beautiful house, and we're just off the picture. Colonel Light's residence at Theberton. He had pet dogs and had a famous veggie garden, had a very good gardener he brought out from England. So he lived there with Maria and her two brothers, William, who helped build it, and Edward. But the only society women to visit them were Mrs. Finnis and my Caroline. So he was treated very poorly by the population because of living with Maria. So I was there at his deathbed, and we frequently called on him, and I was there at the end. The church, Reverend Howard, refused to attend because of the irregularity of his association with Martha. So very, very poorly treated in life. He died in October 1839, so the consumption eventually killed him. So in his will, he asked that I look after Maria until she got married. So a grand memorial was erected, and I helped carry his casket, and it was a grand day, 450 gentlemen in attendance, very hypocritical in my view, considering how they treated him in life. So he she married Dr. Mayo, who is obviously a lot later in life. They had 4 children. So it gives us a view of the North Terrace. So Caroline initially lived with the Hacks on North Terrace, and this became the police station before moving to their place in Hindley Street. So they were in a Manning house, which you still see around, 1860s, we still see them around. So I started, I'm in civilian work now. The New Adelaide Hospital was desperately needed, and I started working there. So I was there from 49 to 52. So a little bit on the 1840s, as people there then will remember, it was a miserable time. Colony was bankrupt, too much speculation. The first census showed that there, out of nearly 2,000 houses, 640 were totally deserted and 200 falling into disrepair. Very gloomy time. A discovery of lead in the foothills. Osmond Gillis had a hand in that. So the Glen Osmond mine, and then later the Kapunda and Burra mines saved our day. So the Agill, this is the Glen Osmond mine. The Hacks were having very difficult times financially, so this is their estate at Echunga. I went out in 1842 to deliver B.B. Hack's child without cost, and I was helping him with his finances. Very difficult times. The show was a huge success, and we sincerely hope that it continues into the future. It was a big occasion. I was judges. I put up money for prizes, and I showed my vegetables and my flowers. But a lot was going on. It was a busy time. Here's Sturt in 1844 leaving for his interior trip, and John McDowell Stewart is with him. And later my John will accompany Stewart on his 5th expedition. A lot happening. There's a little schoolroom behind Holy Trinity. I'm a founding member of the school, St. Peter's College. So we have faith that it'll grow into the future. Interesting. This is an interesting picture. There's an apparatus for making ether. So in October 1847, I attended an operation. I didn't partake, but I helped Doctors Kent and Bayer, where a patient's breast was removed because of carcinoma using ether for the first time, and possibly the first time in Australia. So quite an occasion, because I know from experience, incredibly traumatic before this. So Maria, very few pictures of her. Here she is landing at Rapid Bay. Here she is on a horse seeing light off on one of his expeditions from Theberton. She died in 47. So Dr. Mayo's, it's his wife, former partner Colonel Light, died from consumption, and she caught that from nursing him. So she's buried in an unmarked grave in West Terrace. So the river's still, still grim. Here's an 1850 view of it. People are still getting diseases from it. We didn't get our first reticulated water till 6 years ago. So here's a modern view of looking down Hindley Street to the west. I appeared before Judge Cooper to dispute the building of the Hotel Blenheim right next to my where I was taking patients in. I lost that. So in June 1863, a home for 23, so 3 years ago, we'd lived there for 23 years. It's knocked down, and this Emu store was built in its place. So a lovely Snell, again, one of our early artists, just having some dry comments on how bad the roads were when it's raining, with stumps and mud, Brown Street, ladies' school, lessons for French and pianoforte. And the guy, the pipe upside down so it doesn't get my tobacco wet. So 1st of August 1851, I delivered Joseph Vercoe at Fullerton. Mayo was away, and it was a dark and stormy night with a candle and trudging through mud up to the knees, hit stumps. The miserable conditions in these early days. So 1851, this is an interesting story. The thousands of South Australian diggers left for the goldfields of Victoria overnight, taking the cash with them. The gold they found was then not coming back to South Australia. So financial ruin was approaching, what to do about it. So some very clever thought was put into it by the bankers. Let's go across and bring gold back from our diggers in Victoria and underpin our currency with it. And so here is Commissioner Tolmer, Police Commissioner, on the first gold escort leaving from Victoria Square, going across the desert with Aboriginals to find water. Tough trip. So they succeeded. 18 trips brought back 300,000 ounces of gold and saved them from financial ruin. So it's just some from our Victoria Square there. Here's an 1852 gold sovereign we minted. I've never quite heard how much Her Majesty's government back in the mother country was allowing this to happen, but it saved us. To the degree, I attended a banquet for Mr. Tinlin, who was a banking architect of this plan, and 6th of April 1853, and he was presented with 200 sovereigns worth of plate and 2,500 gold sovereigns by a very grateful business community. So it just shows you how important this scheme was. So one presumes that in the future, these rare coins will be worth something. Another interesting thing, I hated this sort of thing because I had to deal with the aftermath. It looks like a playbill, a real tragedy, 40 thieves, 40 thieves. But it's no laughing matter. It's one of these. But it's done in a theatrical manner. It's advertising William Bell's execution, the last public hanging outside the jail. Bill Bell, murderer and intended suicide. But what really sets me back is just the attitude. Public attention is particularly directed to the above performance, as the times are so squeamish that morals are regarded even more than pleasure, and there may not be another chance of a Christmas gathering which will convey to some minds much merriment as the year expires. I had to certify the death afterwards. So, nice early picture, 1854 from Barton, just showing you how much of Adelaide is now built in the little villages of Walkerville and Unley. But what's interesting is a very well-watered town. Each red dot is Spirit's house. Another strange thing, I was at JP in 1854. I was buying my newspaper next door when I was accosted by some hysterical people from the immigration depot, and I had to go down and help. There's a riot between the young female Irish immigrants who've just been landed, and they assaulted the supervisor, Mr. Morehouse. So that was dealt with, but it was interesting that some of these immigrants had been shipwrecked just earlier in the same year at Moana on the Nashwauk foundering. So they were brought out from Ireland for domestic work. So here's the Ashton's Hotel, Adelaide Jail. I was looking after lunatics there. It was abysmal conditions. Very poorly clothed. So I had to help with the government to get better conditions. The lunatic asylum opened in 1852. And I was regular working there. Became the state coroner in 56, following on from Dr Wyatt. This is the just built last year. You'll recognize the Institute building. 1858, Julia, daughter, received an art prize from the South Australian Society of Arts, and in May 1859, I was elected to their committee at the 4th annual meeting in the Gresham Hotel, which I'm sure you recognise here on the corner of North Terrace and King William. So I liked my bloodstock, so I was a judge at the show, and any horse occasions I would went to Mr Campbell's on the Torrens to look at his feat of horse taming. So 1840 at the White's Assembly Rooms, my different children. Frank takes after Caroline and John takes after me. So Frank got prizes for algebra and Greek and Latin, but John was quite different. In August, it's interesting, a detachment of the 40th Regiment left Adelaide to fight in the Maori Wars. These were getting very serious. We were being badly hurt by the natives in New Zealand. So militia were being sent up, and so John joined the militia and he won prizes for shooting at these contests. So lots of occasions for Caroline, Harriet and I at Government House. We saw 6 or 7 different governors, so plenty of occasions. McDowell Stewart was an interesting character. In 1861, I went to Port Adelaide to meet the lubra, which was bringing John back from the 5th expedition from Port Augusta, and he'd been sent back in somewhat disgrace. I'd tried to sort this out beforehand with Stewart, but to no avail. He had a very strict set of rules, things like no journals to be kept or notes taken. Saddles are not to be sat upon or lain on, presumably in camp. So my John was sent back because he took a journal and he wore a greatcoat when he shouldn't have worn a greatcoat. So a martinet. So I moved in 2 years ago to Coombe Down at Mitcham. Then we were having our place we just bought in Brougham Place, Belmont House, formerly the Masonic Lodge. We had that updated. So recently, heart has given me trouble. I've resigned as being coroner, and that was accepted by the House of Assembly, and Dr Mayo will take my place. Thank you.
You mentioned the lunatic asylum, and there seems to be quite a lot of effort, or the impression was that there had been quite a lot of facilities supplied for lunatics. So what was the numbers? Has there been any work on the numbers of people who had mental problems or were perceived to have mental problems?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, and it's not really. There's whole areas where they can go down burrows. I think, I'm not sure what it was like for 50, 100 beds. It's a magnificent building though, but it was dilapidated in that photograph, and it was looking down onto the Botanic Gardens. So the morgue is still present there, but nothing else is there. So early on, he was saying I was saying dealing with lunatics, including people who had problems in Coromandel Row and things, but I don't know the details, and again, that's the whole area is to try to chase down, because it was probably a lot of confinement and not electric treatments and things like this.
Dr. Woodforde, you mentioned that you moved in that general area. Can you explain where that is or was? And it looked like a bluestone building, looked a bit familiar to me. I wondered if it still stands.
I'll take my, there we go. I'll take my hat off, that hat off. I went there about 3 years ago. It's still there. Email me and I'll dig where it is up. I've forgotten. But it's a private house now, as he would have known it.
Up near Mitcham Lawn.
Yeah, it's right.
Right.
It's right in the foothills, just starting to move up. But I'll send you a picture in.
What I'm wondering is, as you continue up Belair Road, cross Springbank Road, and you keep going, instead of going around to the left up Belair Road, if you sort of do the right turn, Mitcham Lawn has now been a 2-story house built, but there's that bluestone sort of original bit just off right at the top of Belair Road, near as you go to Barrett's Road. Is it somewhere like that?
I think that's probably it. Yeah, but my senile memory is going on me. But yeah, it had its name changed too, so that muddles things up.
You don't mention much about First Nations people. Were there difficulties in the British takeover of the country?
All of the above. But it's really, I'm wondering about sort of doing something from that perspective, because there's a lot of stuff in this early, like they had Aboriginal women voluntarily, as I understand it, come on board the Rapid when they were transferring to Rapid Bay, and they were responsible. So we planted a garden, and the diary talks about having greens and things from the garden. When we went up to search for 16 Mile Creek, the Aboriginal women from, because Sealers had Aboriginal wives, they were stone buildings glazed when we arrived there. She went down and organised with Ram and Jerry at what became Victor Harbour to come up and look after the garden. And I, the doctor, spent time with the Aboriginals with vocabularies and writing them down. So, but what's interesting is the focus on pictures is a big deal. Our early, you won't see that group of pictures anywhere else together. They're marvellous. And they've all got Indigenous people in them. So as long as it's not a noble savage type inclusion, you can tell they're around for quite a while and with spears, so they're hunting around our area still. But where the troubles were out on the outskirts with shepherds looking after animals. And so I'd like to do something on my other ancestor, but it's a difficult one of Police Commissioner O'Halloran and the Maria incident down there along the coast when that got wrecked. So it became difficult, but it was more, I think the Rufus Blacks and things were when they were really defending their country as the settlers pushed out with the animals. All of the things that I'm encountering in this early Adelaide time, it seems okay, but that's a very far distant thing. But there's a whole world we could do of that, like those pictures of them on the beach with pipes and things. It's fantastic. Really, really interesting. And sophistication. I had no idea they got nets and they were happily fishing with nets, and quite something. And I live down at Yankalilla, and wandering in the local, I've now put my geology eyes on, and you can see Aboriginals sat here and worked a tool. And I was up at Maslin's Beach, looking at the geology there, and sitting on the cliff looking down at the beach, and there was, looks like Aboriginals had sat there and had a meal. So when you look, it's all over.
I'm Dr Woodforde. I understand that you delivered most of the first babies born in Glenelg or in Adelaide in 1836-37. I seem to have read a couple of things which have got different names as being the first babies born. And I wonder whether you've got, say, the babies born between December 1836 and perhaps the end of January. Do you know those names?
It's probably get-attable, but there's in the Trove researching, there's several contending things saying, no, this one was wrong, and counter-arguments. I think Woodforde's son did some counter-arguments, so I think those two I put there are valid. But there's others claiming things. There were many doctors. He wasn't the only doctor. I mean, he was never the government's doctor, but there were several other people there. So I don't know how good the records are, but it should be doable to be able to find that out. But I think the first boy and the first girl are probably valid. I mean, the first boy is on the beach at Rapid Bay, and Mrs. Finnis was there too. But it's interesting. There's little small details, like when she had some sort of postnatal issues, when she was finally transferred on the Rapid to a boat and onto shore in Glenelg, she was put in some sort of a boat with wheels on it and taken in town. It was filthy hot, and he was pouring water on the canvas to keep her cool and things. So just how difficult these conditions were. And he didn't have much in the medicine line. So trying to find that out, Fauldings, the chemists are there, and what have they got? And just interesting little tiny details, like he's going down to the port to pick his buggy up to go do his rounds with his single horse buggy and things. But all of that human detail it's hard to get at.
Rob, the ship's surgeons. So, who was the official surgeon for South Australia? Was that Dr. Wyatt?
Yes.
And did Dr. Woodforde come out here as just a settler, or was he in any official capacity?
No, he's listed with government officers of pay. He's usually down the bottom, but he was the surgeon of the survey from getting on board Rapid till becoming established in Adelaide. And then, so when I said that he was living in those buildings which got burnt down in the fire, he was living behind that until I think early 37 when he left the survey team. Then he was homeless, and Mr. Fisher would allocating where you could stay. So that's when he. So I think he was in private a lot, but I get the feeling that he had maybe not full time, but you will be responsible for the people with mental problems, etc. So so I think he probably worked for government like in the 1850s in the hospital. So it might be on and off with private practice.
Thank you. And my ancestor was Dr. Edward Davey, who came 1839, and in his letters back to England, he mentioned that the young women were so healthy and their confinements were so easy that he didn't have very much work to do. In fact, he earned more money doing mineralogy research than midwifery.
Oh, fascinating. I mean, this is all the stuff you want to collect. I mean, I haven't come across that one. So it was they are talking about how marvellous everything that grows, all the fruit and the, so that's a good story. Lovely.
Dr. Woodforde, I would just like to say thank you very much. Really appreciated the talk. I have to confess I am not going to try your pigeon pie recipe. I'm sorry. And as you're leaving, can I just remind you there's probably a fire ban, so please don't light your pipe as you go out the door.
It
Thank
still
you.
smells of tobacco.
Oh, really? Thank you from all of us. It was wonderful.
Bridgewater, Somerset, 1810.
So hello Dawbridge.